Hey everyone. All right. It says I'm live. Oh, sorry. Just as my kettle is boiling. I don't know if you can hear that. I'll get to my tea at the end of this talk. Hello, everyone. I am Daniela Saioni. I see we already have two people with us. Feel free to type questions or comments in the chat all the way along. Often hecklers will come. You can heckle me. It's okay. Today I'm here to talk on how to work with a story consultant. My kettle is really loud. I hope it doesn't show up in the end recording, but oh well. Okay. So who the hell am I? First of all, I am a story consultant. I work in multiple disciplines in the film industry, but I'm here in Toronto, Canada. In Canada, I mostly work as a story consultant. I'm with the Writers Guild of Canada, and internationally, I work as a script supervisor, which is a completely different role on set. But I teach on both topics, and I train other story consultants, aka story editors, aka script consultants. We're known as slightly different things in slightly different places. The union term in the WGC is story consultant. In television, there is a role called story editor, which is a junior position in the TV writer's room. That's not the kind of story editing I'm talking about. I'm talking about, I call myself a story editor, but it's my story consulting work, right? That's my preferred title. Sometimes people ask me what's the difference between a script doctor, a story consultant, a script consultant, and doing coverage. So you may have already, as a screenwriter, have had coverage done, which is when you send off your script, usually to a contest or to a coverage services company for notes. Story editors are a level beyond that because they work with the writer individually or for the producer with the writer to develop the script to its fullest potential. We do that by giving notes to the writer, and sometimes we're asked to rewrite and punch up, but that's a different financial deal. It'll potentially be a different credit as well, whether you're working union or non-union. We'll talk about all of that today and more. But getting script coverage is usually a low fee service that you get on one draft of a script that you can hire companies for. I have a service that's kind of like that, but it's still in the story editing realm. It's called my Script Marketability Assessment Service. It's a level of working with me that's a little bit beyond coverage and a little bit less than story editing. So you can sort of see how the relationship works out, sort of see if I'm the story editor for you, and if you want to take the relationship further to a story editing level. I'm also a screenwriting teacher. Many of you may know me that way. I have been training screenwriters in film and television since 2012. I've been in the Writers Guild since 2016. Most of my paid work as a writer is as a story consultant. I wonder if I can turn off that kettle. You know what? I'm going to do that. Sorry, in the middle of a live, I'm going to get up and turn off that kettle. I just don't want the water to burn out, Hopefully I can edit that part out in post. I'm going to pour my tea. How loud is that? Sorry, guys. YouTube lives. Oh my God. Okay. And the difference between that and punch up and a script doctor. So because I'm a weirdo and I also am a punch up artist, I'm not saying that that's weird. I'm saying not every story editor is also a punch up artist because I specifically mainly work in comedy. People will hire me for both story editing and punch up, and we'll talk about how to find your punch up artists and your story editors and how to work with us. But a script doctor is someone like Patton Oswalt who can punch up and story edit and script doctor, or the late Carrie Fisher. They were script doctors, so they would get paid to completely rewrite scripts, tighten them up, punch them up, all of that. So script doctor is sort of the highest level of that, and that's usually very high paid work. So I work in the middle zone, the story consulting and the punch up, and I train people who want to work in that zone too through my annual program, Story Editor Studio. I'll talk about that at the end because we have an incredible cohort and we start on January 26th, but there still is up to 9 spaces left if anyone is interested in training as a story editor. You will notice on my channel, I've started to interview some of my alumni from that program because the program's now in its 5th year. There's some, on my screenwriting playlist, there are some there's 2 episodes so far of Story Editors Roundtable, where I get groups of my alumni together and we talk story editing stuff. And my first thing was going to be the first thing I wanted to talk about today was a question I get asked a lot. How do I find a story consultant? Now, screenwriters might not even, most of the time in the early part of your screenwriting journey, you might not even hire a story consultant ever. But then you get to certain levels of funding and you work with either an arts council or Telefilm Canada or, the the Canadian Media Fund, or some of the other bodies that require you to engage a story consultant to make the script development faster and hopefully better. And there are good and bad experiences people can have with their story consultant. So in many ways, tonight's talk is really kind of a public service announcement to help you avoid sort of the bad stuff and just really get the maximum joy out of your work with your story consultant. So sometimes people find themselves at that level and they're like, how do I find a story consultant? And you want to interview, I would say try to interview 3, right? When I work as a script supervisors, directors, interview 3 of us before they decide which one. They look at all our resumes and they go, okay, these are the 3 I want to interview. And then they pick one based on the chemistry and the, just the vision in the conversation. That's for script supervision, an on-set job. Arguably, being a story consultant is an even more important relationship because they're helping guide your creative, right? So they're having story consultants will have a large impact on your creative and can really speed up the process of getting you to a really market-ready draft that reflects your vision. That's the goal, right? So you want to you just want to make sure that you vet more than one person and that you really trust the person you engage, and then you proceed accordingly. I'll talk about the steps you can take today. Let's see. So how do you find one? So yes, you can look, I'm in part starting to interview a bunch of my alumni so you can see how different we all are and how maybe you'll resonate with someone. I've got 2 episodes with 6 different story consultants so far, and I have many more where they came from in all different regions of the world because my story editor studio program is international. In this cohort, we have Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK. I oddly don't have any Americans this year. Usually we have a number of Americans in the program. Is everyone okay in the US? I'm just worried because the industry was so hard there this year that I'm worried that that's the reason we're not seeing Americans in the program this year. But if you are interested in the program and you're an American or from anywhere, just reach out to me. I'm still pre-interviewing this week, but I hope to have the cohort locked in. More on that at the end. So you can snoop around online. You can Google story consultant plus your city. And again, you can get a story consultant who doesn't live in your city. I mean, it's nice to sit one-on-one in person with someone, but I have clients all over the world. Like you can get a client in Los Angeles if you're based in Toronto. You can work with someone in Europe or Asia or wherever you want. So it's really the kind of position where, you can really look all over the world for your ideal person. And who your ideal person is, you may not know exactly until you talk to a few people. So do some research. Let's say you're doing like a comedy feature and you, I'm a comedy specialist, so that's a bad example. I'm not telling you guys to hire me. I mean, you can, of course, hire me, but we have people with all different specializations of genre, of, let's say you're doing science fiction. When people come to me with a sci-fi project, whether it's film or television. Now, not everyone does film and television. People who go through my program train in both, but there's some story consultants who work strictly in television and some who work strictly in features. The vast majority of us are pretty well-rounded and we do a variety of types and genres, but some people really lean into certain genres. So sometimes people come to me with science fiction or a genre piece and I'll say, look, I know people who this is their jam. This is what they love to do. They're very passionate about it and I can give them a referral. So yeah, honestly, if you need a referral to anyone, I'm also on the board of Rephrase Filmworks, which is a company that Allison Fraser, it's a company and a collective of women and non-binary story consultants and cultural consultants, because Allison Fraser's mission is to promote women of color in this job specifically, and also in cultural consultancy. So if you ever need someone from a specific culture or someone of color, I can certainly connect you to Allison. And also, I mean, we have so many great alumni in the program from all different cultural backgrounds, from different countries, who speak different languages. We've had people from Germany, Turkey, France. So we have people who speak all different languages. Yeah, and different sort of sensibilities and preferences, right? So in terms of the kinds of projects they want to work on, because it should be mutually beneficial for you and the story consultant, right? You both have to have the passion for the project. And the thing that I notice about story consultants, because this is, let's face it, it's kind of a strange field. I'm a union story consultant, and in the WGC, when you work in feature film, there are no set rates. Like, we have to negotiate our own rates every single time. And the reason, the reason is, I know what the reason is because, oh, the light just went on the back window. The reason is that every project is different. Every project has different requirements. Some projects will involve some rewriting and punch up. Some projects will just be straight notes. Some projects will be like you're hired for the whole run of the project. So you might work on 3 different drafts with the writer, or you might just be hired on the last draft. I've been hired right before, they were going to camera and they just wanted to zhuzh up like the last bit of make the scene work, sing as much as possible right before they went to camera. And I've been hired right from the logline stage. So it really, when you choose to engage your story consultant is completely up to you. I find when people are hiring me at the logline stage that they know me already, that they've already done other projects with me, or they've been my screenwriting student and they just have that trust with me. So they hire me right at that stage, which is totally possible. But normally you guys usually have at least like a treatment that you're bringing to a story consultant, or at least the first draft of a script. Sometimes I prefer like when people come to me at the treatment stage, to be honest, because one of the things, I'll get there. I'll get there. Let me see. I just want to make sure I didn't. Oh yeah, another way to meet story consultants is to go to live script reading events where story consultants are. So almost every year, like in the last 3 years, I think I've done 3 years in a row. I've been the live story editor, one of the 3 live story editors at the Female Eye Film Festival in Toronto. They have an incredible script development program where they pick 10 scripts and they cast them with actors, and they do a live reading of like 30 pages of the script, or 20, I think. And then 3 story editors listen and give notes in the moment. And I'm one of those people. So there's a live audience. So the live audience at that event can hear sort of our styles and what we lean into, because we'll all have different kind of ways of giving notes and giving feedback and engaging with the writer. So you can hear and watch and see for yourself at those events sort of who you gravitate to. And that's how I've met many of my clients, through those. And I have a story editing student in Chicago, Jenny, who has a really great Instagram channel, Jenny from Nebraska, Jennie, and I interview her in one of my story editors roundtable, because she runs live script readings in Chicago and does that. Of course, Allison's company, Rephrase Filmworks, does, I can't remember what they named the series in Vancouver. It's a relatively monthly live script reading series. That's online. It's a Zoom series where she features a script written by a female or non-binary, usually person of color, and there's 1 or 2 or 3 even story editors who give live feedback on that Zoom. So you can start to see people in action in places like that, at film festivals, you'll see YouTube interviews. I think that other story consultants will also have YouTube channels where they showcase sort of what they do or how they think, because everybody's brains work differently. So it's like, whose brains do you gravitate to? Do you connect with? Okay, so once you find someone, let's say you got a telefilm, or you're going for a telefilm grant, and you have to name who your story consultant is going to be. They usually sign a letter saying, I agree to work on this project. And, you know, at that point, you may or may not already have a contract in place because you're still waiting to hear if you have the funding. But once the funding comes, then you will set up a more formal arrangement. But actually, even before you do that, I skipped something important. Once you sort of hone in on the 3 you want to interview, have that preliminary interview. In my Story Editor Studio program, I train people like, I mean, you know, it's very natural to just have that preliminary interview, but I train my story editors in a very specific process that I sort of came to over the years because I used to, I don't do this anymore. I used to let people hire me without that interview. And it potentially is not good for either one of us, because if we don't get along, if we don't have that chemistry, if the writer actually doesn't want notes, this is a true story. Very often writers will come to me because they think I have connections. I mean, I do have connections, but they're not like, you know, I can't just pick up a phone and get you an agent, for example. But I have a lot of producer connections in LA, and people assume that if I'm their story editor, I'm going to take the project to like Paul Feig. That's not going to happen, right? So sometimes that sort of comes out later on, and it's kind of shocking. or other things that come on is like we have completely different working styles or understandings of like character and plot. Now that's not the majority of the time, but the 1 or 2 times that happens over the years can be very painful for both parties. So I say always, for you guys, if you're the screenwriter, interview 3 people. The interview is usually like half an hour. I've got like the sort of questions I ask, into a half-hour format, where I get to know the writer's vision for their project. I may or may not actually read their project. That's I leave that up to my students when they're figuring out, you know, how to run these interviews. But sometimes I actually do read the project. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't read it because I know the writer, or sometimes I don't read it because I don't know the writer and I cannot read. I have so much work at the time that I can't actually stop and read a full feature for no compensation, right? So sometimes I'll just want to vibe out with the writer if we get along and if we have that basic chemistry and what the expectations are. In that first meeting, you talk about sort of your vision for the project, where you want it to be, so that when I do read it, I can sort of have a sense of where it is now and how much I believe you can get it to the place you need to get it and how much I can guide you to get there. So I can often see things. You'll see me talk about this in other talks on this channel, but like sometimes I can really see into the project. I'll read it and I go, oh my God, I see the potential in this according to what the writer has said. They just haven't got there yet because they either haven't had the experience. So a lot of writers come to me, they're very new, right? Or they have the experience, but this is a different kind of project for them. Maybe they've never written comedy. Maybe they've never written anything this commercial, because often I'll work with people who have worked in very alternative ways who are now writing something very commercial. Whatever the case may be, my goal is to hear what the writer wants to achieve with their project and the draft currently to what it wants to be next, and to understand what their current level of ability is, which can vary wildly. In Story Editor Studio, I'm right now doing a call for scripts because we work on 14 projects in that program. And we do a range of like half-hour pilots, 1-hour pilots, feature treatments, and feature films in over 7 weeks in the practicum. Like I do 3 weeks of training and 7 weeks of practicum. And so we need 14 scripts. And we only have 9 students so far. Not all of them are bringing scripts. So I need to recruit scripts. I've started to get them. Thank you, guys. I don't even read them. I don't even vet them first, because for the very specific reason that when we do this job as story consultants, we meet writers at all different levels of their career and ability. And we need to be able to help writers at all those levels, right? So if you're sending me a script for Story Editor Studio, or even if you're hiring a story consultant, you don't have to be the greatest writer in the world. It doesn't have to be perfect. You sort of come to us as you are, and we're just going to sort of assess how much you know, and sometimes because I'm a screenwriting teacher, I find myself actually teaching people how to write, which is maybe not ideal for everybody. Actually, people seem to like it, but it's not, that's not really what your story consultant's supposed to do. But sometimes because I'm a teacher, I can see, oh, this person just needs to understand character work a little more. By the way, like 90%, I tell my students this all the time, 90% of the time, The fix is in the character work. A lot of and this is a very North American thing, but a lot of screenwriters don't really train in a way that they really truly understand character work, or maybe they do it intuitively, but they don't have like the language for it, and they don't know how to apply it necessarily to all aspects of their writing. So very often, like that's something to really as story consultants hone in on with the screenwriter. So in that in initial interview, I will ask them, their understanding of character work, their understanding of structure, because, people train in all different ways. And there's so many like paradigms out there: to Save the Cat, the sequence approach, the hero's journey, Robert McKee's story. There's all these paradigms out there that people use, and you sort of have to be familiar with as many of them as you can, not because they're the system you have to use, but because you have to understand how your client thinks. And you as a screenwriter want a story consultant who can relate to you in a way and communicate with you in a way that you understand their notes and their vision for the project, and you're able to execute. It's you kind of know it in the interview, I think. It's the way that I choose also like who I'm going to work with. When I do that interview, I'm interviewing my client as much as they're interviewing me, because I want to know, is it going to be fun? Like, I love this job, but I've had some stories where people are like, when we finish this draft, you're going to take it to Hollywood for me, right? That's actually not your story consultant's job. But also it tends, the few times that has happened, it has been people who are the furthest away from selling a script than like most of my clients. And I've had a number of clients sell scripts, by the way. It's wonderful to see like the increasing, amount of sales that are getting made over the past few years. You've seen me talk about that on this channel before. Sorry, get a drink water. I wonder how much I'm going to edit out of the replay. So have that initial interview, talk to 3 different people. We want to get clear on your vision for your project, as well as your experience and your goals. And if you choose your person, you talk to 3 different people, you choose your person, draw up a simple contract. Your story consultant will probably have a version of that, but sometimes my client comes to me with a contract. I had a client who went to business school and he was transitioning to writing. So he had this like really elaborate contract. It was fine. Like, I totally signed it. It was all the terms were sort of the same. I'm a Writers Guild story consultant. So we also have to do a Writers Guild agreement, right? But yeah, you can bring in your own kind of contract as well, because there's basic terms outlined in the IPA and in our production agreement. By the way, many of my students, I would say most of them, are still non-union. So I can absolutely refer you to some great non-union story consultants. But again, they're still gonna want to contract with you for 2 reasons. It protects both of you, right? You want to have in your contract, you want to set out the expectations. Is this how long, what are the deadlines? When do you expect the work done by? What kind of work do you expect? Do you expect rewrites? Do you just expect detailed notes? Listen, it's beyond coverage, right? They're going deeper than coverage. We often do like the general notes, like of the strengths and weaknesses, but then also like the scene by scene notes, how to improve each thing on a scene level. Sometimes, and most of the time, we'll also get into dialogue. But when it gets into punch up, that's a little different. That's like a polish. That's a little bit extra money. And when it gets to a rewrite, it's a lot more money. So there's all that to be talked about in advance. And then sometimes we're also helping you with, if it's television, helping you create your pitch deck. So for the people sending me TV scripts in the Story Editor Studio program, if you guys have a pitch deck already that you want to send, we'll also work on that with you guys. But for those who don't know what I'm talking about, in my Story Editor Studio program, as I was saying, I solicit scripts from writers out there. It's free to do that. I just have a room to schedule 14. Well, there'll be about 8 after the scripts that the writers are bringing in themselves in the cohort. And if you are joining the cohort in the next few days, you have first right of refusal to bring a project in that we're going to work on. But if you, if you're one of the people who is submitting a script, and let's say it's a 1-hour pilot and you have a pitch deck, that's great. We'll give you notes on that as well. Because I want my people in that program to actually know how to go through a pitch deck, what the components of the pitch deck are, and how to troubleshoot it, how to punch it up and improve it, and all that. I've got lots of examples of ones that I've helped people do. Let's see. So yeah, that contract will set expectations, goals, fees, like what the payment's going to be, what the payment schedule is, what the contract or what the credit may be, if any. Sometimes punch-up artists don't get a credit necessarily, but story editors, if it's union, we will. If it's non-union, there's no guarantee of a credit, but you could negotiate that with your story consultant. And decide what happens, like have an out clause. What happens if either of you want to terminate the relationship? What does that look like on a financial and timeline level? So it sounds like a lot, but it could be a 1 or 2 page contract. I've done very, very simple ones, or I've done ones where working with the guild is very easy because the IPA is the contract. So it's just a cover sheet where you agree on title and like credit and delivery dates and fee. That's it. It's like 2 pages, I think, from what I remember. And then there's like a thing. Oh, and by the way, for those who don't know, when you sign with a Writers Guild story consultant, it's not the same as, because I'm a member of ACTRA and WGC. So if you were to hire me as an ACTRA member actor, your whole show would have to be ACTRA, and you agree, like you sign a contract with ACTRA where once you go ACTRA, you kind of don't go back. Like your company is a signatory to ACTRA, at least for the life of that collective agreement. With the Writers Guild, if you're hiring a story consultant, we're like free agents. So meaning like you can hire a story consultant that's union, and you can still be non-union, or you can be union. You're not signatory to the WGC for life. It's just for that project, and the terms that you negotiate for that project, they can be very different from story consultant to story consultant and writer to writer. So just in case you didn't know, and my clients, even my foreign clients, have to sign a WGC agreement with me. That changed a couple of years ago. I didn't know until I knew that they had voted on that. So even my clients in the US, if my work is not covered under a WGA agreement, we have to sign a WGC agreement. But like I said, it's very, very fluid because it's very negotiable and you're not tied to the Writers Guild. So yeah, have that meeting, do the contract, and then what to expect. It depends on what you've set up with your writer. So normally for me, once you've engaged a story consultant, I give you like, okay, I'm going to meet with you on this date. Well, first I have an initial, I have that initial client meeting that might be different from the interview. So the interview is like a half hour sort of getting to know you. This is what the project is. Then I'll read the project and have like a 1 hour initial client meeting with my first set of thoughts before I give my full set of written notes. And we talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the script and where I can see it going next, what the writer wants help with, especially we go deeper than we did in the first interview, probably. Sometimes that first interview is the initial client meeting because I know the person already. But if I don't know, I do that initial interview, we do the contract. Then I do that full meeting where I've read the script and I talk to the writer about their goals. And then I go off and do like however many pages of notes. My notes have ranged from 10 pages to 40 pages, really depending on where the client's at and what they need, right? I can go really deep because I think it's because I am a screenwriting teacher. Sometimes I get into teaching in those notes if the person actually needs it. Most people don't need that, but sometimes people are very new and they hire a story consultant right out of the gate, which I actually think is kind of smart because you'll accelerate that script development, right? Sometimes I'm always surprised when it's younger people who do that. Like they're in their 20s and they're like, I'm in a hurry to get into the industry, which, okay, I guess I can understand that. I feel like maybe that's something when we're older. I just did a talk last week on screenwriting over 40. And sometimes we're in this hurry. We're in a hurry to like get into the market. And I would feel like that maybe it makes more sense for someone new who's older to hire a story consultant. But sometimes I get 25-year-olds. It's amazing. Writing is great because you can be any age and have that drive to do it, whether it's, the drive to make something saleable or just to get really as good as you can in the craft and do it over time. But okay, so yes, that initial client meeting, if you are interested in my Story Editor Studio program, it's once a year. I teach people how I do it. I get professionals in that program. We have some professional story consultants in this cohort, and they're amazing. They just have never done formal training, and they want to see how I do it. And I love that. I think that's great. I often get really, really professional people in there. It's really an honor, the number of people I meet, who some of them I even think are like beyond my level, in different ways, in certain ways, because we get producers and development executives and, directors. And we get all kinds of people in that program who have to give writers insightful, actionable notes. The thing with the notes, it's not just notes, it's like actionable. So you're giving the writer a path. Your story consultant should be giving you a path to your next draft that is clear, that is in line with your vision. There's nothing worse than having a story consultant who is trying to get you to make a completely different movie. And I know that from being on the other side as a screenwriter who's worked with a story consultant who tried to make it a completely different movie. Not cool. And so that's, you sometimes learn the hard way when you're on the other side of it as a writer, what to do and how to guide the writer when you're a story consultant. So yeah, hopefully they're on the same page with you. They see the same vision as you. I had a client who was a female director doing a movie, doing an adaptation of a short story that she was making into a feature, and it was her vision was really, really special, and it was different from the original short because it was a feminist take on it, and it was so interesting. But she kept getting notes from men, and this is not to say that men can't give amazing notes. They can, obviously, but the bias that they were bringing in, they weren't really able to draw out the vision she had for making it a feminist story. It was so good. And so, yeah, we worked on three drafts together, and I think it was a great script by the end of it, and her first feature. So sometimes it's a matter of talking to people who align with your vision too, and I will always be the first one to say, this isn't a project for me. If it's not a project for me, if I'm not sort of in line with what the client wants out of it, but I might be able to connect you to people who are, because we're all different. There's a whole array of us in the story consulting world. Still, oddly, not enough of us. Believe it or not, still not enough story consultants. I still only do the course once a year because that's sort of what the market will bear. I don't need to train endless people in this. I like to do one cohort a year, go deep with them, and have them get out into the workplace and make their clients. We don't have to saturate the market, but also we don't have enough people. I would say, for the amount of perspectives needed to serve writers, there's so much more in development than there is in production. So, although there may be sort of fewer jobs in the writer's room in television, let's say, although there's sort of more jobs for lesser pay and smaller rooms kind of thing in the writer's rooms, but there are jobs in the writer's room. But there are many more people in development, because a lot of times, I was saying this last week, when I work on set as a script supervisor, I'll ask the writers, how many scripts did you option and develop, or how many scripts did you option before you sold one? And most of them will say 9. So 1 in 10 scripts gets made, but several of those 9 will have gone into development, where the writer was paid by the network or by a production company some amount of money to develop the script, and with a story consultant. Listen, I forgot to say this, there's other kinds of story consultants. There's story consultants that come in development rooms in television and come in and spearhead sort of and accelerate the development and lead a writer's room. There's that kind of story consultant. There's story consultants who work one-on-one. There's story consultants hired by producers I'm usually hired by the writer themselves. I usually work with writer directors, actually. And that's who hires me. There's different kinds of story consultants. There's people who are really, really executive, and they're used to doing sort of big television kind of work or high profile work. I tend to work with first time or early stage writers in both film and television. I've gotten a lot of people to a TV sale, which surprises even me. When I say I've gotten to them to that, I've been their story consultant in the draft, in the drafts when they were bringing it to pitch, and also with their pitch deck. So helping them with their script and pitch deck, and also sometimes their pitch, because I have been a pitch coach at some of these festivals. But yeah, I've been able to help a shocking number of people, like it surprises even me, that are fairly new or brand new, get them to a sale, which is awesome. That's not why I do it. I do it because I love writers and I love writing, and I love being able to draw out the best in people. But and another large number of my clients are people who I've also done dramaturg. I did two plays this year as a dramaturg. I've never done dramaturg. I call myself a comaturg because that's not a word, but I'm a comedy specialist. I've certainly done my share of drama, both as a writer and as a story editor, but I really can specialize in comedy. But anyway, I've done two plays this year as a dramaturg, and that was really fun. Both had funding, both had Arts Council funding to hire a dramaturg. And it's slightly different from being a story editor in film, but not that different, actually. So you're still trying to get the best out of the text. You're also, because I have an understanding of acting, and you want your dramaturg to understand acting and directing, of course, but otherwise on a story level, on a script level, it's kind of similar. You also have to understand the limitations or the benefits of doing live theater, like what can the writer accentuate in that medium that's different from film. Also very important if you're going to do dramaturgy. Why did I tell you that? Oh yeah, because some of my clients, like, they get Arts Council funding or they get telefilm funding, and they have to attach a story consultant. So usually at that stage, they're fairly new, or it might be their second or third feature. But sometimes it's their first feature. So yeah, I've done features, plays, TV series. You want to find out what your story consultant has done. If they've worked with someone, you could get like a reference from people. A bunch of us have testimonials from our clients as well. Okay, so how you work together sort of as the project is developing, it's up to both of you. So you guys decide, are we going to, sometimes when I work with a director, I will work together with them, meaning like we'll do some days together. Like if it's, I'll give you an example without telling you the director's name. I was working with this director on his fourth feature, and he was wanting to do something more commercial because he does very experimental stuff. And I talked through, he was not a writer, right? Like, he was a writer, but not really. Like, he was a director who needed to write to get, his projects made, but he had no training as a writer. He didn't see things from the writer's perspective. So I would ask him all these questions over those 8 hours about the characters. And I would say, what if this, what if that? And I did detailed notes on the character work, right? In that case, he had actually hired me to write it. So that was a little bit different. I may not have to do that if I'm not actually writing it. If he's coming to me, or she is coming to me with a script, I'm just giving notes. But in that case, actually, he did actually hire me to write. So I went really deep with him in terms of the character work, how he saw the world. We talked about his life philosophy and everything, because I had to make it sound like one of his films, right? He wanted a commercial script that was still in his voice. So I, as the writer, had to get to know his voice. I was writer / story editor because I was also creating the structure of the story. He came to me with a story idea that I had to beat out into a commercial film and then write. That went very well, by the way. So yeah, that was one way of working. Another way of working is when you meet with the writer, you have that initial meeting, you say, okay, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of written notes. And then you have a meeting after they digest the notes. So you, as the writer, would digest the notes. And then we have another meeting, which is the final meeting. It's the final meeting for that draft, where it's another sort of 45-minute meeting. Sometimes it's an hour, where I make sure that the writer understands my notes, how to implement them, and what the path ahead will be, right? You can work with writers like that, where it's just, you don't have to be in the same room with them. You can engage with your story consultant on Zoom. You have some, you talk, and then you just work completely. Your story consultant is working on their own. Then you reconvene, and then it's in the writer's hands to do the next pass. And then you negotiate, okay, am I going to do a second level of payment where, just continuing on, or am I going to, sometimes, you can also agree that you'll do one pass, and they can choose whether they want to hire you for the next pass or not. Or you can pre-plan. Like if someone's hiring me on one of the, let's say the Telefilm low budget agreements, like Telefilm gives funding to people. They have a cap right now. It's interesting. They only have a cap for story editors, which is very bizarre to me. But on those low budget Telefilm programs, the cap is $3,000 for your story consultant. Sometimes, it depends, right? Because if you're doing multiple drafts with a writer, it can be more than that. It could be more days than that. Like I've talked about my rate already. So you'll see on my website, my rate is $1,000 a day Canadian. So if you, if you were to hire me, that would be 3 days, right? So which might be enough for some of the writers in that program, but often I'm doing a lower rate because that's the low budget agreement. And I may or may not take that on, but usually those projects are really super fun, and it's really, really fun to see those writers' voices develop. So so there's a preliminary interview, an initial client meeting. You decide whether you're going to work together or if you're going to work separately. And it's like, okay, the notes are in my hands. Again, the second thing I'm talking about is way more common, by the way. And then, if I'm hired for punch up, there's multiple ways you can do punch up. I'm going to do more talks about punch up in the weeks ahead because my new punch up program is coming out. So I will talk about the punch up process in a little bit more detail. But you can punch up with multiple punch up artists. You can have, if you have a story editor like me where I also do punch up, you can have one person doing it, or you can have them working with a few people. You don't want to go crazy. Like I've made the mistake as a writer of hiring too many punch up artists. Ways to meet your punch up artist, by the way, you can Google people. You can find out who does it and have a meeting with them. You can go to stand-up comedy shows and listen. The reason I started even teaching screenwriting, it was during when I was a stand-up still, was because I was seeing all these stand-ups with incredible comedy voices, just incredible, but who didn't know screenwriting. And screenwriting is the tool that will elevate like the pay for stand-ups, because there's a ceiling in Canada, at least where I live. There's a ceiling for how much comics can make until they're very, very famous. Many of our comics are in the United States and the UK now because of that ceiling, right? There's only so much money you can make unless you write for television or you sell a feature. That's the way you can elevate your pay and have a sustainable living in a way. It depends. Like sustainable living has changed so many times in the past, decade in this industry, but you have a much better shot at a more sustainable living anyway by writing. So why did I say that? Oh yeah, because you can also get work as a punch-up artist, but those stand-ups didn't always have the understanding of the medium of screenwriting, which is a detriment because punch-up artists may be so focused on the jokes that they're not understanding how they fit in to the character arc and the story and everything. So if you are a stand-up watching this, please train as a screenwriter. It doesn't mean you have to train with me, but I have programs specifically that I initially designed for stand-ups to learn the medium, because it's much harder to teach people to be funny than it is to teach them the medium of film and television screenwriting. It's so much easier to take a funny person, and maybe that's why so many of my students who sold stuff were not stand-ups necessarily. Most of them were regular people or novelists, but I originally created those programs for stand-ups. Anyway, I digress. Working with your story consultant, working with your punch-up artist. There's a long discussion in the Ink Canada group I think it was yesterday. A filmmaker asked about how much to include in a screenplay if he works in an improvisational style. And I had this really long answer based on these huge comedy directors I have worked with about how they incorporate workshopping, like in the script, in prep, but not on set. I'm in set, yes, a little bit, but we have a solid script by the time we go to camera. And yes, there are a few filmmakers who deviate from that. Why am I telling you that story? Oh yeah. And I was just I was explaining to that filmmaker that the danger when you hire stand-ups to punch up or stand-ups to improvise or improvisers to work on set, and you don't give them enough prep to really understand the characters and the story that you're trying to tell, they're going to come up with suggestions that might be great and funny, but may not serve the needs of the whole story. So your story consultant everyone that you hire as the writer or that you are involved with as the writer, your producer might be the one hiring them. It could be the director, it could be the actors. You need that. You need a through line. You need to know what you want. And it's good practice hiring a story consultant, because they will ask you the questions that probably your actors are going to ask you, your director will ask you, and your producer will ask you. So it's kind of worth it just for that. But it's great to work with a story consultant for script development, for accelerating script development. Just want to see if I forgot to say anything that I wanted to say. Yeah, so basically have clear communication, hire someone that you work with well, and do the research, meet people. We're out there. I know we're not, it's so funny, we're not like a unified body. I mean, many of us are in the Writers Guild. Many of us are on Ink Canada, which is a Facebook group that probably some of you watching are on. If you're not in that group, you can be international and join that group. It's a phenomenal group for screenwriters. There are other screenwriting groups where you can, but do your homework, because not all story consultants are created equal. And even, someone might be super experienced, but they might not be the right person for you. So do your homework, and then really communicate to each other. Hopefully you find someone that gets the project, and is able to help you get to your vision and your goal for the draft faster. Set up your expectations clearly about what you want, and the story consultant as well. Set up your expectations for time, for deadlines, and pay and credit, and then it'll probably be a happy relationship. Does anyone have any questions? I still am interviewing for my 2025 Story Editor Studio cohort. I wanted to be finished pre-interviewing by tomorrow, but I think there's still going to be a few people interviewing this week. I'll extend it as late as the next 2 weeks, but we start on January 26th and we go to March 30th. It's one of my favorite programs that I teach. It's so rare in the world. The first time I taught it was at Pacific Screenwriting Program, and we had 6 people, and they allowed me to the 6 sort of series lab residents of that school, and I got to teach them story editing and punch up, and which punch up is a bonus class that I'm going to include with the story editors cohort. But I will also put punch it up for sale on its own if you guys just want to train as punch up artists with me. I don't know who's watching, so I don't know if you're writers or story editors or whatever, but it's all there for you. It is very unique in the world. I think that's why we get international people at such good levels in their career. I'm going to put up my LinkTree, because on my LinkTree, bit.ly/Saioni. There's links to a few things, a few resources. Well, obviously there's resources on this YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, some of you are watching on LinkedIn. You can go ahead and ask me questions if you would like. I can see them from both platforms. On the LinkTree, you'll see a link to the Story Editor Studio program. You'll see a link to, I have a 5-day challenge starting tomorrow, which is how a lot of writers first meet me. It's a low-cost challenge whereby it's 30 minutes of work a day. And by Friday, you should have a strong, personal, funny, and marketable premise for a film or a TV series. And then on Saturday, we have presentation Zooms. You don't have to compete. There's 2 levels now. There's like a non-competitive and a competitive level. But if you are in the competitive version, I say that because it's not cutthroat at all. Everyone's really nice. And it's a really safe space. The Zoom is private to everyone who is in the competitive level. And I may share the replay with the other people in the challenge who are not competing, but who want to see what the final Zoom was. So you're all in the same Facebook group. That's happening this week for anyone who's interested. You'll see some of my, it depends how many people join. I will probably hire one of my best screenwriting alumni ever to be the judge, because he often judges and he's great. But if not, I'll judge it. I've done that in the past, and you'll get social media glory. And the winner of that challenge in film and in TV each get a spot in my film and TV writing programs, pre-interviewing for Story Editor Studio, and I'm accepting scripts. So if you have, we've got a lot of half-hour pilots this term, but if you have like a 1-hour pilot or a feature or a treatment for a feature that you would love my story editors to look at, I am down with that. Please email it to me. In fact, I'll post it in the well, it's so weird posting my email address, but I will. It's on the Story Editor Studio page. So there you go. My email address is in the comments there. You can email me and let me know. You don't have to send me your script. Just tell me what the title, genre, and type is, and the log line. So by type, I mean, is it a 1-hour pilot? Is it a web series? Is it an MOW? Is it a feature? I think we have enough half-hour pilots. The reason is I have a lot of comedy writing students who've written half-hour pilots, and a bunch of them are allowing us to work on them. If you are a writer who wants my story consulting students to work on your project, send me that, and then I'll tell you if I can schedule it in. Then if I say yes, we can schedule it in. Send me the actual script by January 26th, which is our first day of class, and I'll be scheduling everything based on the sort of logline you send me. Like I said, it doesn't matter what level you're at, because as story editors, we work with writers at all different levels, super professional to brand new at the gate. And I think it'll be great experience for my story editing students to work with you at whatever level you're at. It's free to you as the writer. We do 2 scripts a week. So whenever I schedule you, you'll be someone will volunteer to pre-interview you to do that client interview that I talked about in this. They will record it and they'll post it in our private class group, so all the story editors can see your answers to the questions about your vision for the project and your experience. And then we'll bring you in on your scheduled day. It's always on a Sunday. So Sunday from 2 to 5. And so there's like one half of the class and the other. If you can make it live, that's amazing, because you'll see your notes live. People will give you verbal notes and some people will give you written notes. I let people change it up in the class. I want them to have experience in both. So we have 9 or 10. I think we have 9 officially, and there might be a 10th. There might be even more. We'll know by the end of this week. You'll have notes from all those people. They don't have to give notes on every single project. They have to give notes on at least 10 of the 14 to get the certification in my program. But usually everyone does every project. So you'll get a lot of notes. And the fun part for you as the writer will be seeing like the wildly different notes you'll get from all different voices. The fun part for me is watching my story consultants develop their voices and seeing like the transformation of them getting to be super confident in their own voice. It's really, really fun for me. It's as a teacher, but also like it's kind of fun for the writer to see, wow, like I get these comments a lot from the writers who go through this process with us. And like I said, totally free for you. If I have time, I will even give you notes. I do it with the ones that are scheduled earlier they're scheduled over 7 weeks. If you're earlier, I'll tend to take more of the lead on the notes to show the story editors how I do it. And also because people tend to be less confident at the beginning. And then, so by the end of it, I will probably not give notes at all, but you'll see like the story editors in the program are on fire. Tallulah, the training really is rare. There's endless training for writers specifically, but very little for working with writers. It's needed and appreciated. Yeah, there is like, I saw after I started teaching this, I saw that UCLA Extension also, I don't know if they started their program after mine or at the same time, but they have a program. And someone I know took it, and NFTS in London has one. So the National Film and Theatre School, I graduated that program in my next cohort. He's so good. I'm so excited. He's so good. We have some really cool people in this cohort, I have to say. And you know what? I say that every year because it's true. It's really interesting to me who gravitates to this work, because it's not easy work, right? It's super creative and it's super underappreciated, kind of like script supervision. Script supervision is not as creative, but it's super underappreciated. So these are the jobs I gravitate to, guys. No, yeah, teaching is fun. Teaching is fun. Helping people develop their voices is super fun for me as a writing teacher and as a story editing teacher. Any questions? It says I've got 5 people with me. I'm here for any questions. And then I'll get off, and I've got to film some videos tonight. I have to open up the challenge group tonight, our Facebook group for the challenge, and onboard some people into the Story Editor Studio program. Oh yeah, and there's another thing that's not related, but it is related. So true, far too underappreciated. I have on this channel a YouTube watch time giveaway. The reason I'm telling you guys is you could win one of my courses by entering this contest. So if you go onto my playlist that says contests and promotions, you're going to see like the challenge video, the video about the challenge. But in that playlist, there's one that says YouTube Watch Time Giveaway. It's got a big present on it. Click on that, because in the description of that, there's a link where you can read how to enter the contest. Totally free to enter. You do have to give me your email address and your YouTube handle so that when I draw it, like, I'll know who Tallulah B is, right? And how to contact her. And I will, and the goal is I'm trying to get my YouTube public watch time up. That's why I'm here live every week. It really does help me get my YouTube watch time up. Plus, it's super fun talking to strangers on my YouTube channel. But yeah, it helps me get my watch time up. I have to hit 4,000 to get monetized by YouTube. So every 1,000 public watch hours, I'm going to do a draw, and of everyone who's eligible. So to be eligible, you have to register to do for the contest, and then you have to. And some people registered and they didn't do the second part. You have to watch some videos, and under each video that you watch, write your favorite takeaway. So in the comments section, write your favorite takeaway, and you can enter up to 4 times. So you can just do it once and you have one entry in the draw, in all 4 draws, right? Because there's going to be 4 draws as the time accumulates. Or you could do, up to 4 entries. So most people, I think there's 7 people eligible now. I have to go through and count. There's 7 people eligible, and most of those 7 people have done 4 comments. So there's 21 entries in the draw. When I hit the 1,000th watch hour, and we are today at, I believe we're at 922 watch hours. So depending on how much you consume my content, we'll get to 1,000 soon. And when we get to 1,000, I'm going to do a live draw of those 21 names or more if more people enter. And that person will win whatever course they want. If they're eligible for Story Editor Studio, they can do Story Editor Studio. That's one you have to be eligible for. But, you can do my screenwriting program, either film or television. You can do my script supervision program. These are not cheap programs. You can pick you can choose your own adventure. And I will do that for every 1,000 watch hours. So just letting you know that. Tallulah says, I used to do props and script supervisors have saved my ass many times over. We're in the ass saving business, but it's different. It's a little bit different with story consulting. Well, as you know, Tallulah, because I think you are a story consultant, it's a little beyond that. It's even more, it's more creative than that in a way. Although I think problem solving at any level is quite creative. Okay. Any other questions? I can stay on for 4 more minutes. It says I've got 3 of you. Is there anything I forgot to say? Talked about the challenge, talked about the YouTube contest, talked about how to send me a script if you want it to go through our program. I will offer the program again next year. I do it every year, at least once a year. I mean, I've only done it once a year, but yeah, we'll see. I might up it. It's a lot of time and energy from me. And also, like I said, I don't need to flood the market with story consultants. It's good enough, I think, the level that we're training story consultants at. So I think once a year is going to be a thing. Okay, well, no other questions. Thank you guys so much for being here. And feel free to reach out, even if you want to hire one of my students or you just watch the videos. I think I posted their contact info under each video. If not, I will add that. I think I did. I would post their names and Instagram handles or whatever, however they wanted to be contacted. But yeah, I've recommended people. I can recommend. There's all my alumni in different ways. They all have different strengths. So if you sort of give me an idea of what you need, I can certainly connect you to one of my story editor students alumni. All right, everyone. Thank you so much.